Welcome back to another episode of the I Hate It Here podcast. I am super pumped for today's conversation. It's been a long time in the making. I feel like we've been emailing each other maybe for like 6 months at this point.
Yes,
and now
definitely.
that I finally have you on, today's discussion is one really timely and just something I'm deeply passionate about. So without further ado, let me introduce you to Isha. Isha, can you introduce yourself? Tell everyone what you do, where you work.
Hi. Well, it's great to be here, Hebba. My name's Isha Vij. I serve as Vice President of Employer Growth at an organization called Maven Clinic. Maven is a digital health organization focused on women and family health and provides 24/7, 365 care and support to people navigating starting a family for the first time, growing their families, parenting, all the way through menopause and midlife health.
I love that. Women's health, obviously very important to me as a woman, would like to have healthcare and options to it. So I've always been kind of obsessed with what Maven is doing because I think it's just a wonderful benefit for employers to give. And if you've ever had to navigate your healthcare plan as a woman, my doctor will just be like, yeah, I can't tell you. You got to call your insurance.
Yeah.
And then like an hour later, I still don't have an answer. So it's like deeply and relevant right now in the light of the last few years, legislation being passed. With that, like, so you work closely with customers. Kind of, what are you hearing from people in HR about what's happening in the world right now?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's certainly a tough time to work in HR. I will say that it's always a tough time to work in HR, but
and an election year.
I empathize for where y'all are at. So Maven works today with about 2,000 employers globally. So I'm talking to HR leaders all the time, right? And by and large, every year seems to have some sort of theme. What I'm hearing most today is that one, HR leaders over the last few years have done a lot to really try to care for as many of their employees as humanly possible, right?
Yeah.
That is such like a noble and such a well-intentioned thing to do, right? You want to make sure you're being as inclusive as possible in the benefits you're offering. You want to make sure that you're meeting your employees where they are, regardless of where they are in their life stage or phase, or in our case, family building journeys, etc. But what has also happened is what I hear is like there's been a bit of a bubble building around a number of different point solutions that you have brought on, and you're shaking your head. So I imagine you may be in this seat yourself.
Yep.
Where it's like, wow, we brought on all these different point solutions to help our employees navigating all these various stages of life. But one is that's resulting in, frankly, like a not ideal employee experience because there's too much, right? And choice is one of these weird things where like you want enough, but too much actually puts you in a little bit of a paralysis, right? And then two, from an administration perspective, HR leaders by and large are being asked to do more with less, right? And so managing these relationships with tons of different providers and partnerships and vendors, it's just not working. And so by and large, what I'm hearing is I need to be more thoughtful about who I'm deciding to partner with, what vendors I bring on, and ideally as much consolidation as can happen, the better, right? But alongside with that push for consolidation, I don't want to just bring on anybody to bring on anybody. I want to work with partners who have like proven outcomes that ensure if I bring you on board, I want to make sure my employees are, either happier, healthier, more productive, like that it's actually accomplishing something for both the employee as well as the employer. And so I think, you have your work cut out for you this year because you're doing more with less, right? But your employees are still demanding richer, more inclusive, more robust benefits. And so partner selection, vendor selection it's a whole different ballgame this year, it seems.
Yeah. There's a lot that you have to go through to like pick a partner, but I also think the really interesting thing is not only do I feel this pressure to like pick a partner that's going to deliver what the employees want, I then feel a ton of pressure to actually educate the employees on the benefits themselves. Because I feel like the average employee doesn't think of benefits as part of their compensation. And
Okay.
so when I'm sitting here and I'm thinking so thoughtfully, like, what do our employees want and need? How do I give this to them? How do I make it easy for them? I find that even when I like over communicate, sometimes the benefit still doesn't get used.
Yeah, I think that you bring up such a good point. It is really about communicating in a way that, frankly, like your employee gets it, and that once they get exposure to it, there's not such a high bar to jump through about how to use it, right? And so, is it intuitive? Is it easy to access? And is it truly like, is it delightful to use where you show up and you experience that you experience the benefit not only yourself so that it has this stickiness. It's not just about the initial adoption of the benefit, but it's like that continuous engagement. We've seen on our end just incredible storytelling has been the differentiator. First in actually getting employees to understand what is a Maven, and then once they experience it themselves, particularly I think because of what we're trying to do, we're trying to help people start families, right? As like safely, affordably, and efficiently as possible. When you do that, not only does it feel good, but you certainly win a lot of champions at the organizational level. So we've found our employer partners, their ERGs are such evangelists of what happens with Maven. They're very quick to, I bet in HR, most people aren't coming to you to thank you for bringing
Never.
on a benefit, right?
I wish if they could
Yeah.
say, if someone could say thank you, I would be the happiest person alive. I don't feel like I ever get thanked. Instead, I just get criticized.
Yeah,
So,
exactly. And so like my favorite thing to hear from benefits leaders is like, this is the only benefit that people come to my office and say, thank you for bringing it here. And I think because look, it's like they're very joyous life stages. Like you think about starting a family, you think about having kids, raising kids, perhaps having more kids. Like it's a joy. And I'm a mother of a young toddler, young child myself, and it's a joy, but it is extremely hard too. And it's extremely challenging and it's expensive and it's a lot of different things. And I think, when I look at even one generation above mine, certainly is like this concept of this village, right? When people say it takes a village to raise a child, well, I don't know many people that have that same village today. I certainly don't. I live in New York City. Um, and I have, wonderful friends and a great community, but it's not exactly the same. And so with Maven, I think that our intention has been to build that that feeling and that sentiment of having a village behind you and giving you like access to care when you need it. And when you're able to deliver that, the engagement is incredibly, incredibly sticky because you're there when people need you the most. We're not there only from 9 to 5 and then our door shut. And we're not there of like, you text your doctor and they say like, please expect a response in 48 hours. Like that's not what it is. That's not a village. You need people to actually care for you when you need it and you need help when you need help. And so that's been really helpful in driving some of that, not only adoption, but that stickiness for individuals using the platform. And that's been really fantastic because it's the people that need help, like middle of the night, access to a lactation consultant because their baby's not latching. 2 a.m., very popular time for people to talk to Maven's lactation coaches, or 4 a.m. sleep coaches, right? And like here in New York, I could hire a sleep coach or a sleep consultant. It's probably going to cost me $250 each time I talk to them, right? And like that's just a part of the benefit that Maven offers.
yeah.
So it becomes easier for employees to understand really how much of a gift it is because it's like that's $250 that's staying in your pocket. That's something you have access to, knowing like you have a whole job you need to go do tomorrow. Like, let's make sure you're well cared for when you're not working.
It can be so overwhelming. So I think that I don't know if you've noticed this, but like in the last 10 years, maybe the last 5 years, it feels like the dialogue has really changed where like there used to be those campaigns where like you can do it all. You like can have a career and you can have a family and you can do all these things. And I feel like in the last few years, a lot of moms that are also executives and just like working professionals have been so open about the fact that it's kind of impossible to do it all. That's a lot of pressure to put on someone, especially when we've seen like during COVID, moms left the workforce in waves. We have yet to return to the maternal rates that we had in the workforce since pre-COVID, right when COVID hit. And so I feel like there's been this like bigger discussion around like, okay, we can't do it all, but like how can we actually get the help we need? And so that's why I just like, love the Maven model and everything you've been talking about. Cause it's like, this unrealistic expectation that we can be everything all the time is just like so damaging because then people don't get the help they need.
I think that's spot on. And I think the key part of what you just shared is all of the time, right? Like I experience this and feel this deeply myself. Like I have, a high stress job like many mothers in the workforce, right? And I have a child that needs me. She's 2.5 years old, right? And I also have a partner, I'm also a sister. I'm also a daughter. Like you're being pulled in a lot of different directions. And I think for me, what I really, really try to balance, at least for myself, is like, I can actually do it all, but not at the same time, right? Like
I love that reframe.
sometimes I'm actually just going to be like a great mom and kind of shit at everything else. And sometimes I'm going to be super good at what I'm doing at work and other things are going to fall to the side. So it's like that everything all of the time that has been helpful for me. And so many of the moms that I have talked to in the last few years, like, I think that's really, for me, the release valve of like not having to do it all exactly at the same time, but also being super mindful and cognizant of the fact that like in our organization, I certainly, with my team at least, talk about the help that I need. I talk about the resources and how I'm trying to make it work because I do think there is a bit of a stigma around, you can do it, but you need help around you, right? And like you're going to lean in and lead out on certain things, and you have a ton of balls in the air at all times. But on some days, certain balls are made of glass and certain balls are made of rubber, and on a different day, it actually might be totally switched. And so that's what I think we're trying to really help equip women and families and working parents just really across the board of like, how can you get the help you need when you need it? I think you're totally right, particularly around getting women's participation in the labor market.
Yeah.
COVID definitely pressure tested that, and I think that you saw a big chunk of women in the workforce leave, right? And like I understand that, right? Like I fully understand that. And I think what it created were also it did create some flexibility in working environments that frankly didn't exist before. And so now I think you're feeling a bit of that stress again, where return to work is a big topic, right? Hybrid work is a big topic. And so making sure that you have the flexibility in your return to work policies so that, okay, maybe people are coming back. You gotta be set up to keep them there too, right? And like driving that engagement, there is some magic that happens in person. Like I'll be the first to admit that.
For sure.
You need flexibility when you need flexibility. And that I feel like really, really is the key, and something I hear HR leaders like constantly struggling with about like, how do I create these policies that great, we bring people back into the workforce, or we bring people back in really high rates post having a baby, right? We have a really generous parental leave policy. That's awesome, but we want them to come back, right?
Yeah.
And so it's great.
How are you supporting them when they come back?
Yeah.
That's a piece that I feel like is usually missing. People are like, yeah, we have this like 4-month maternity leave policy. And like my follow-up question is always like, okay, well, what's like the onboarding when they come back?
And like, it's not just the onboarding for that individual. It's like, what does the onboarding look like for their leaders and their managers. I think that's actually way more commonplace today of like having managers be well trained on what does that ramp off look like into parental leave? What does that ramp on look like? But that's also not the only life stage where people need some flexibility and some grace, frankly. And so like embedding that into more of a norm, I think is certainly part of the conversation that I hear from benefits and HR leaders.
Yeah. I went down this is like deeply personal, so I'll just preface it with sharing that. I went down the rabbit hole of like trying to figure out if I wanted to freeze eggs, what that would look like, and what that meant for me. Just being a mother, I think, is like the most beautiful thing. And also, I think the hardest job on earth. I joke that like HR is the hardest job. No, I think being a mother is, because there's so much that is pressure that is put on women and mothers to, like we said, do it all with like such little support. So seeing that there are solutions popping up and even more HR teams that care about that support, I think just like give me hope for the future. Whereas like in the past, I was like, I can't be a mother and a career woman. Like I can't do that. It always felt like just like black and white to me. And now I feel like there's so many more opportunities and like understanding in the workforce of what does it actually mean to be a mom and a woman in the workplace, which is like
Totally.
a discussion that cannot be overlooked.
Yeah. And not only what does it mean to you, Hiba, to be a mom in the workplace, but like, how do you actually parse out environments where it is not just like bare minimum acceptance of you being a working mother, but where can you find a place that would be celebrated, right? Like moms hustle. I agree with you. Moms is like, that's the hardest job.
Yeah.
But moms are very efficient people. And so personally, I manage a bunch of moms myself, and like they're some of my best team members because they don't have time to waste, Like, they're like, I got to get this done. And I love that. And I'm like that too. Right. But I think that's what we see, particularly millennials, Gen Z, they're very cognizant of making decisions around where they choose to go work based on the types of benefits and policies that are in place. Like you talked about freezing your eggs. And I think, it's not so far in the past where a fertility benefit or funds available to help you think about doing something like freezing your eggs, like that. It wasn't that long ago where that was, I would say, kind of rare, It
was just Google, right? Wasn't Google one of the first places to be like, we'll pay for you to freeze your eggs once you're longer?
Exactly. And it's like, that is, by and large, like that is becoming more and more of table stakes and expectations for individuals as they explore where to work, right? And it's not just because they want access to the financial support. That is certainly a piece of it. These things are expensive to do, right? Freezing your eggs is not cheap. Going through IVF is not cheap. And IVF, for example, like the cost to do IVF is more than most American families have in their savings accounts, right? It's very expensive.
Yeah.
And it's not just getting access to the financial reimbursement or the financial resources for these family building and just sort of reproductive healthcare journeys, but it's about like, what does that reimbursement represent, right? That represents that the employer is a type of employer where, it's more than just okay to have a child, right? And I think that's what people are looking for. I think we see, like 70% of employers, 75% of employers saying that these types of benefits are super important in talent attraction and talent retention. And then employees equally, I think, just marginally less, saying like they will make decisions on jobs on whether or not they have these benefits in place.
For sure. I think you said it earlier. It's like table stakes at this point. So I was going to ask you, like, what do you do when an HR team comes to you and they're like, we absolutely want to explore this benefit, but like we have no support internally?
Yeah. I mean, it happens all the time, right? It's kind of what I mean, though, about like, it's not necessarily always offering the reimbursement, right? The reimbursement is one component. And Look, Google has a lot of money to be able to offer. I think it might be unlimited.
Yeah.
I don't know exactly what it is for Google today, and that's an incredibly generous to put forth for your employees. But really, not every employer is set up to cover the cost of fertility treatment, and that's okay. Um, but they come to us because they say, "How else can I show my team members that it is something that I want them to feel comfortable pursuing?" And so I can't really stress enough, the financial component is one component, but giving them access to the types of resources they need as they navigate these decisions is super critical. So with Maven, for example, in our family building program, it's of course we can guide them to the right clinics and places where they can go freeze their eggs or they can go through IVF. That's the clinical component, right? Of course, if the employer has a financial reimbursement that they are willing to provide to individuals going through this, we can administer that benefit. That's easy. But it's how do you care for the person going through these journeys in the first place, right? So one, my thought is there's a lot of anxiety being driven by companies in the industry, frankly. In During the holidays, I saw Instagram ads for Black Friday sales for freezing your eggs or for going through IVF. And that is scary to me because that makes it seem like that should be your first step in this journey. Your first step should not be, oh my God, there's a sale on IVF. I should go get IVF. Really, it should be, oh, I'm interested in starting a family. What is the best path for me to start a family, right? It is, if you're not ready to start a family now, you want to think about it, something you do in the future, you should have an informed conversation with somebody about whether freezing your eggs is the right thing for you to do in the first place, whether you even need to do it, frankly, right now. And if you're ready to start a family now, our focus is really helping you when it's possible. How do we help you achieve pregnancy in a way that's not going to be super expensive and that's not going to be incredibly invasive? Again, that's not a possible path for everybody, but if it is, we should really be thinking and caring for you holistically rather than just driving you to the treatment, right? Because then it undermines the whole experience itself. And you talk to anybody that's frozen their eggs, or you talk to anybody that got through IVF, it is incredibly, incredibly emotionally and mentally taxing, even if everything is going right. And that's the thing is
Yeah.
these journeys are not ones where they're free from setbacks, right? There's a lot of ups and downs in these journeys. And even if every single thing goes right, it's a lot. It's a lot for an individual to think about and feel.
I mean, I left the appointment I went to literally overwhelmed. I went home and I sat down and I was like, I don't even know where to start. Is this the right thing to do? Now I have to go to this doctor and that doctor and I have to ask this person and that person. Not to mention, family building is also deeply personal to the person. And so I just think there's so much at stake here and so much support that can be given to women in the workplace to really help us navigate this. Cause I felt overwhelmed. I'm I understand our benefits. I know the ins and outs of everything we offer. What's a deductible? What gets covered? I know all these things, but the average employee doesn't.
Yeah.
And so it's how do we help them there? And that's the other thing too that I want to talk a little bit about. There are so many, I don't want to say so many, but I do think there are some major challenges or barriers to entry for individuals and couples who are really trying to figure out how to access fertility treatments or family building options. What are some of the challenges outside of financial that y'all have seen when people start this journey?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about one, right? Which is access to the right information, right? Is this the best path for me,
I
right?
can't just ask ChatGPT anymore. I'm just kidding.
It's actually really interesting. I've never tried.
Should I ask ChatGPT, is this the right time for me to have a child?
I am intrigued what that spits out for you. One is just like this peak anxiety that we talked about of like
Yeah.
people thinking that egg freezing or IVF is like the first stop on the journey, right? Whereas let's roll it back a little bit and understand what are the options, what are the various paths. Because there's organizations will have different things to win, right? If they can get you in the door in a clinic as the first stop. And that's fundamentally very different from what we believe is the right path to helping people start families. Like one of the things we look at is whenever possible, how many people come to Maven thinking that they need IVF, that we're actually able to help get pregnant naturally. Like that is a key metric that we look at. It's a pretty unusual metric in our space because we don't profit from.
I was going to say, why would you want people to know that they, like, you want people to think that they're struggling, so then they use the benefit and come to Maven, right?
Well, not for us.
Not for you. Not for you.
Not for us. I think it's like, it certainly is. There's inherently built into the business models of many players in our industry to drive individuals to always expensive and often unnecessary treatment, right? And that's very different from our model. It's very focused on helping people achieve starting and growing their families with like as less intervention as possible, that it keeps them like healthy and safe, right? And so I think about that, number one. Two is if they do need to pursue treatment, and we work with individuals to understand if and when that is appropriate, keyword being like appropriate, there is a huge lack of access, right? There's just not enough supply for the volume of demand for services. And that's not just in the fertility and family building space. That's basically across the board. If you look at like OBGYN.
I was going to say, yeah.
It's really hard to get in with an OBGYN in certain parts of the country, right? And in certain parts of the country, there aren't any OBGYNs.
They're fleeing.
I think the last time I looked, so I'd have to check my data here, but I think the last time I looked is like over a third of US counties actually do not even have a practicing OBGYN. And that's incredible, right? Like terrible, but that's one of these stats that like it always like shocks me, right? So these maternity deserts, like, there is an access to care question. And then you wonder why, as such an advanced and developed nation, like we have these insanely high maternal mortality rates, right? Because people don't have access to the right care when they need it. And so that's, such a big driver for us in making sure people have access to reproductive endocrinologists, have access to OBGYNs. They can access them on the Maven platform 24/7, 365, right? And they can do so usually in a matter of an hour or so. Because most people like don't have access to that type of quality care all the time, right? But when you need care, and you need somebody you can talk to that doesn't have skin in the game to drive you to do something one way or the other, right? You just want to make sure that you can meet people where they are, you can understand where they are in their stage of life and phase of life, but also just like their lifestyle, their lived experience, et cetera, and like point them to the best direction for them. On Maven's platform, we also offer like virtual doulas because this is also another one of these very hot topics among HR and benefits leaders is making sure that all of their employees feel well informed and supported as they navigate labor and delivery, right? When we see unnecessary C-sections across the board in the United States, we see a really high percentage on certain populations like Black women, right? And so really thinking about how do we make sure that we help all people feel knowledgeable, like they can advocate for themselves, like they can have another advocate for themselves in the room with them. And one of the studies that Maven underwent that was recently published in ACOG is just the impact of these virtual doulas in driving down C-section rates up to 20% across the board, but up to 60% for Black women specifically. And like, that's the type of work where you just realize how much the lack of access to care is driving some of the terrible outcomes that we're seeing across the board in the United States.
Wait, these stats are so good because I remember you all did this report and I was so excited to dive into it. Like, I'm such a data person. Data is my love language. And I'm also like, I'm wandering through this world with like my lived experience, like my bias to like the things I believe. So the more data I see about these things, the better I honestly feel about like my own beliefs, but also how to support employees.
Yeah.
Because just because I haven't made the choice yet to be a mother does not excuse me from having sympathy and care for the mothers in the workplace. And I think a lot of times people play the game of out of mind, out of sight, and that just shortchanges our employees so much. And the reason they are upset about how we care and treat them is because we don't spend time thinking about the experiences they're having. So like, what were some other interesting stats that came out of that study? Or anything you want to share for people listening as they're thinking through offering this type of benefit? And we haven't even touched on the other things that Maven does, but like offering a type of fertility or family planning benefit to their company.
Yeah, I think some of the other things that came up, frankly, relate to some of the comments that I shared with you earlier, of just what I hear from HR and benefits leaders, not only in terms of the number of employees or prospective employees and employers saying how important it is in their talent recruitment and retention processes, but I think it was nearly like 50%, particularly of Gen Z employees specifically, saying that reproductive and family health benefits have a very high correlation in terms of who they choose as their employer, right? And so that is, I think, a trend that is continuing to drive this becoming what you and I talked about as table stakes of this is not like a nice to have anymore, right? It's a need to have. Again, like the financial reimbursement piece is one piece of it, but just overall having resources for people in these various phases of life. And then what we also heard coming up in this report is that consolidation of benefits, right? As like most employers are saying to us, I have this push to invest more, to be more inclusive, right? It's like do more with less, right? But in order to do that,
motto.
yeah, exactly. In good company, that's pretty much what I always hear, regardless of how big or small the organization is. But nearly 40% of employers saying, we're actually going to do some consolidation because we're just at a breaking point. We can't do it anymore, right? And like, how do we maintain and preserve and actually increase the number of employees that are covered by the types of benefits we bring on board, but actually make it sustainable for us, right? Because that bubble that I talked about of like this point solution fatigue, it's actually not serving anybody. Neither is it serving the benefits teams who brought all of these point solutions on with such great intentions, right? But it's also not serving the employees because there's too many of them. They don't know where to find it. And it's a really, really, it's just a really disjointed experience for individuals.
Yeah, you don't want to it is hard enough navigating like insurance, but then to give your employees 6 systems that they're logging into, they're never going to use the benefit. And then all the hard work and thought that HR people put into getting these benefits, like behind closed doors, sometimes we have to fight for these things. And that,
I believe that.
I mean, that is like, it is just the truth that we are fighting for them. So like to fight for them endlessly, to like put your heart and soul into advocating for your employees, to only make them log into 10 systems into a benefit they're never going to use is just like,
what was it for?
What was it for? What was the fight for? And so like I see the consolidation. I've even just talked about this a few weeks ago, the consolidation of just like HR tools in general outside of the benefits space. Nobody needs to be logging into like 10 systems. And so I feel like last 10 years, we saw like a lot of fractured, like one-off solutions pop up. And I feel like in the next 10 years, we're really going to see a consolidation and a streamline of the benefits, all the things, because it ends up being a better experience for the employee.
Better experience for everybody all around, right?
Yeah.
I think what you also see though is like everyone, not everyone, but like a lot of organizations or a lot of vendors saying they do a lot more than they actually do, right?
Mhm.
So that's where I hear from benefits leaders too, is like everyone says the same thing now. I don't even know how to differentiate. And that's where your jobs get a little bit harder because you have to be detective, right? Of like, you say you do this, but you actually do it, or you just say you do it now because you know the consolidation is
Yeah.
a high priority. And I guess the last piece I would say in some of these interesting things that are coming out of the report is, we talked about it briefly, is this general movement towards return to work, right? So over 90% of the folks we talked to said they have to go into an office at least some of the time.
Okay.
And the majority of employees saying now that like the access to the virtual healthcare actually makes that in-person work easier, right? Because you might have 10 minutes in between a meeting. Like how amazing if you could talk to a career coach in those 10 minutes, right? Which they can do on Maven's platform. Or
Talk to my doctor.
you don't have to take off work to take your kid to the pediatrician if you really just want to show them like a rash. My daughter has a rash on her leg, right? I just hop onto the Maven app and I show the pediatrician, like, is this something I need to be worried about? And they're like, no, absolutely not. And that saved me having to take 2 hours off, right?
I literally take a day off like once a quarter and try to stack my doctor's appointments because I can't fit them in.
Totally.
And that's just for me. So like now imagine if I had a whole other person who was like relying on me.
Yeah, no, that's exactly right. And like, look, we're not a replacement for in-person care, right?
Yeah.
In-person care is a real thing and there's a real need, but healthcare happens 24/7, 365. Healthcare doesn't happen when you're only at your doctor's appointments, the one day a quarter when you show up, right? It's like for your kid, it's the weird rash on their leg, or for you yourself, you're like,
My back hurts.
yeah, my back hurts, or like this happens, or it could be a host of other things. And being able to just access care pretty quickly, like that's the game changer for people. And that's what makes it, we talked about like doing everything. It's like, what are the systems in place to make it even possible to do some of the things? Like, these are the types of benefits at resources that make it possible to not just survive,
But thrive.
but as close to thrive as possible, right? Like I'm certainly not thriving every day, but there's certain days where like
It's supposed to be.
maybe that once a quarter.
Once a quarter.
Yeah.
No, I mean, that's true. Like when you care for your employees, they thrive. I had Donald Knight, the CPO of Greenhouse, on a few weeks ago, and we made our whole episode about caring for your employees so that they can thrive. And that is like when I come back to all of these conversations I'm having and everyone I get to meet and all the wonderful things that everyone's doing, it really comes back to like, how are we helping our employees just be able to show up every day? Like you want to keep that talent, you want to support them, you want to grow them, you want to develop them. But what are we doing to make that possible? Because there are so many roadblocks of just life, just like general life, that stop people from being able to show up as the best version of themselves. And so like the role that I think we play in the HR space is fiercely advocating for the support and the benefits so that those challenges, there's one less one for your employee to worry about, so that they can show up and do the best work, so that they can be motivated, so they can be productive and creative and collaborative. There's so many beautiful like outcomes from just supporting and caring for people.
Yeah, I think that you couldn't have said it better myself.
I'm about to make myself cry. Literally every episode this season, I'm like, I'm going to cry. Everyone's had to hear me say it. Okay, last thing that I kind of want to touch on, because I've been seeing a lot of this too. Menopause benefits. And like I have just learned so much about menopause. Really thankful to all the people out there that are posting about it, because I'm like learning, and women are working and we're working through that. And man, sometimes I'm like, men, y'all got it easy. But I saw menopause benefits as something that Maven Clinic actually provides. What does that look like? And how did like expanding past fertility care, thinking about women in all the moments in their life?
Yeah, it's such a good question. So Maven started in 2014, actually specifically with the maternity portion. our first product was maternity and newborn care for that life stage and journey.
Yeah.
And some of the earliest employer partners we worked with said, like, this is amazing. Like, the engagement is there. We're seeing incredible, not only qualitative feedback from our employees that are enrolling in these programs, but we're seeing the outcomes and behaviors that we were hoping for with these types of benefits. We think you should get in some other areas. And ultimately, that push from our employer partners, that's what got us into the fertility and family building space to begin with. And then that's what got us into parenting and pediatrics. And for a long time, we were in this like rough stage of life of starting and growing a family and being a parent.
Yeah.
And that's where we were for a number of years. And a few years ago, just around 2 years ago, I think, if my memory serves me right, we started to notice many employees and members using our provider base, whether it was pelvic floor therapists that maybe a new mom was using after recovery from labor and delivery, to ask questions that were actually seemingly more around symptoms related to menopause. We saw our nutritionists get more questions on related to menopause, and our sleep coaches. And so it became very clear that actually there's this growing hunger for information, and women are using our platform in a way that we had not at first intentionally thought, but like the need was clearly there. At the same time, we started hearing from our employers, hey, employees are coming up to me and saying, that's awesome. You have this new fertility benefit. What about me? Right? You're saying that you as an organization are trying to achieve 50-50 gender parity. And you've made all of these claims on, like, you want to see women in top senior positions, particularly in the leadership and management levels. But for a lot of women, when they're up to get these top senior leadership positions, like, they are also, many of them, going through symptoms and experiencing symptoms that are going to have an impact on their work life, right? They're going to be having some sleepless nights, and they're going to be having some hot flashes, and they're going to be having some brain fog, and they're going to be having some weight fluctuations. And all of these things are going to show up for them, not only in their personal life, but this is going to show up for them at work. And so if you as an employer are saying, I want to achieve gender parity in the workplace and I want women in top senior positions, how are you actually supporting them in this phase of life and providing the same types of resources that have become so common in the workplace, right? Like fertility benefit is a good example, right? Like, what kind of resources are you providing for these population of incredible talent, but is feeling impact, is feeling like they actually have had to take time away from work, and haven't felt like they are the most productive because they're dealing with these symptoms, and them not knowing where to go. And it's not even a simple answer of, oh, go talk to your OBGYN. Most OBGYNs received like under 1 day of training in medical schools about menopause. Like, people are not well trained to talk about menopause. So you can't just say, go talk to your OBGYN. So there has been this big desire. It's actually our fastest growing program here at Maven, this menopause program, and it is meant to help support individuals navigate the symptoms of premenopause, perimenopause, and postmenopause. And also to kind of make sure that the information out there around what the symptoms, how they show up, is actually factually accurate. I think culturally, you hear the word menopause and you probably think of hot flashes as like the number one symptom. It's actually not the number one symptom, right? It's in the top 5, but weight fluctuations is, I believe, the number one symptom that people come with. And brain fog and lack of sleep. And so how do we actually make sure that people know what to even look for in the first place? And then 2, give them access to the providers like the pelvic floor therapists they can talk to about really sort of like keeping that part of your body well equipped as you go through these various life stages, or the career coach that you can say, I'm starting to experience symptoms of menopause. Like, I don't even know how to talk to my manager about this because I need a little bit of a different working environment or some flexibility. Or I want to talk to a nutritionist because I'm experiencing these weird weight fluctuations in a way I never have before. So, equipping women with the type of resources to have these conversations while simultaneously giving the employer the resources they need to make sure here's how you help people
Yeah.
that are going through this life journey. It's not just caring about the member, but on the employer side too, like it has to come together for the individual to feel well supported. So I would say, menopause certainly feels like, if it isn't already, certainly that next frontier of
Definitely.
benefit.
Yep. Yeah. I agree. Oh my God. I've had such a great time talking to you today. I just like there's something beautiful about how we have really to actually tried to support women in all stages of their life. And it was very scary when I started my career thinking about like being a woman in the workplace and like what my possibilities were and the barriers I was going to face. And am I going to be able to find a romantic partner who like is also like wants me to have a career and all these things. And I think a lot of women deal with that all day long. And then you think of HR, like 70% of us are also women.
Mhm.
And so I'm just excited that there's more things out there to support us throughout every stage of our life because there's something so beautiful about it. And we're only going to ever reach like pay parity when there are more women in senior level positions too. And so I'm excited for the future.
Me too. I'm really optimistic about it, right? Like, I think that we see just across the board, it can feel like there are constant setbacks
Yeah.
um,
Alabama.
in women and family health. And I think there's absolutely no denying that. But I feel really optimistic because I feel definitely a growing enthusiasm from leaders like yourself in sort of like, you can be a great catalyst for this change. And I love that the employees are also being more vocal about what do they need to be successful.
Yeah.
And so once we start having these conversations and stop shying away from them, like that's really weird. We'll see that continue to blossom.
I love it. Well, thank you so much for spending time with me today. For anyone who wants to get in touch with you, how can they reach you?
Great question. They can reach out to me via my email. So Isha, ISHA .Vij, VIJ at mavenclinic.com.
Isha, thank you so much again for today. I am just grateful we finally made this happen. You've like taught me so much. Maven Clinic's putting out some really great, the reports, like the stuff. I just followed your CEO and I think I'm just excited about the future. Exactly what we said. Like there are a lot of cool people out there who are trying to support their employees and are going to listen to this. And I hope feel equally as excited as you and I felt today, just trying to solve the problems all of us are facing.
I love it. Well, it was such a pleasure to talk to you too, Hebba. Thanks for having me on.